Here. No one will ever hear about that. Let me let me throw the prologue onto a screen, which I probably should have done before hitting record. Share screen. I guess we did little things. It was like Japanese Labor Day, which I didn't have off, ironically, but
If there's any group of people that needs a holiday in Japan, it's the workforce.
yeah, my family was off, and yeah, they just the company I work for doesn't do like national holidays, which
Hmm.
whatever. They also took us to Okinawa like several times, so I can't complain
Oh,
too
cool.
hard. Yeah, I'm too cheap to go there myself, but I'm certainly
Yeah,
happy to let the company pay, and my
yeah,
wife
yeah.
is constantly
That-
jealous because of that. Okay, I guess we will jump into this thing since I got that
Sure.
ready and pull down my screen. Hello, welcome to Time Enough Podcast. It's where we delve into all of the episodes of the Twilight Zone and beyond. As always, this is Matt here, coming back. John Arminio. Hello, the man whose last name I just have to say, because usually I just go on a first name basis around here. But
I appreciate that. Thank you. How's it going?
yeah, it
I'm glad to
rolls
be
off the
back.
tongue. Yeah, yeah. Thanks
Yeah,
for
thank
jumping
you.
in. Um, this one, yeah, today's episode is 4 o'clock. I'm pretty sure it was a first view on my end. How about for you? Is this one you knew or
Yeah, this is not one I recognized at all. Um, uh, after watching it, I kind of hmm, not
I,
surprised that it's it was a first time watch. I think.
yeah, I had a few comments like with this one in the front view mirror. We don't know rear views after. Okay, front view mirror, which doesn't exist, but people were saying it's a weird one, which I think I could say yes, it's a weird one. It also
Yeah,
does have some very interesting concepts for 1962 television, which we'll, you know,
yeah.
maybe bop into. But before that, let me go ahead and spew out some trivia. The original air date was April 6th, 1962. The teleplay is a Serling, though based on a short story of the same name by Price Day. Lamont Johnson is back to direct. He was a TV pro who is regular in the zone. Oliver Krangle is played by Theodore Bickle, and his performance is fully ironic. The dude himself was very active in actors' unions and was also a folkie who ran around with icons like Bob Dylan and Pete Seeger. On the acting front, he appeared in the African Queen, The Enemy Below, and My Fair Lady, and received a supporting Oscar nom for his role in The Defiant Ones. Manya McGill played Mrs. Williams. She was a first-rate star in the Irish film industry of the 1940s, but has a notable genetic claim to fame as the mother of Angela Lansbury. Mrs. Lucas was Phyllis Love. Her main focus was on the Broadway stage, but she also made TV appearances on shows like Have Gun Will Travel, Gunsmoke, and The Outer Limits. Lyndon Childs, I guess that's how you say it, was the FBI agent Luther Haw. He was a 60s TV guest star presence, showing up on Perry Mason 4 times. But as I do this show, I realize that everybody was on Perry
Yeah.
Mason. You were I was probably on Perry Mason and forgot about it,
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna give you a prologue to rock through.
Sure. That's Oliver Krangle, a dealer in petulant and poison. He's rather arbitrarily chosen 4 o'clock as his personal Götterdämmerung, and we are about to watch the metamorphosis of a twisted fanatic, poisoned by the gangrene of prejudice, to the status of an avenging angel, upright and omniscient, dedicated and fearsome. Whatever your clocks say, it's 4 o'clock, and wherever you are, it happens to be the Twilight Zone.
All right. I was like kind of like vicariously stressing out a little bit as you were coming upon Gotterdammerung,
Yeah,
which yeah. I was like, oh man,
I
that's
got
in
that
there.
one. Yeah,
Yeah.
I listened to enough heavy metal that I'm very familiar with how to pronounce Götterdämmerung.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a few years of German when I was in school, but I also got like C's and D's in it. So
Okay.
I don't know how much I should trust myself on that. This one we only have like four actors, so I guess the focus is very squarely on Oliver Krangle as kind of a weird morality play, I guess.
Yeah. 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 So he, he becomes obsessed with reporting deviance and like communist influences and incompetence of whatever he sees as evil in the world by calling people at all hours of the day, writing angry letters. Um, and I think the conspiratorial mindset that he has when sort of like he loops all of those evils into one big conglomerate of malfeasance, and that thinking still seems pretty familiar in the age of QAnon. So I don't think his lunacy is that far afield from what we see today, but I just think the way the story is told is pretty clumsy, unfortunately.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to come straight out that there's a lot of things in this episode I found very interesting and like
Hmm.
weirdly timely, but yeah, this might be the dumbest twist we've had on the
Yeah,
Twilight
yeah.
Zone thus far. But it's one of those
It's
things where there actually is a fair amount of the episode that's quite good, but the twist just like makes the whole thing a
yeah,
little dumb. And then when I was doing the trivia and looked up Theodore Bickle's, history, I was like, oh, that kind of makes it interesting again. It's almost like this is an episode that you should probably just stop 2 minutes before it ends.
yeah, yeah. I think in the mid 20th century there was a real like industry of like leftists and Jewish actors like playing fascists. Like they were really good at it. It started in the 30s when like German expatriates like Conrad Veidt would come over to America to play like evil Nazis. After they escaped Germany, they were like, all right, well, we're gonna stick it to the racists and the Nazis by playing them as dastardly as we can.
And the Twilight Zone is like a prime time stage for that.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah,
and when we were doing One Step Beyond, there were several actors with that sort of pedigree where they were,
yeah.
coming from the more oppressed, or the groups that were, and then people get what I'm going for. Anyway, yes, playing against type is very effective in things like this.
Yeah, yeah, and
So
certainly in the Defined ones, him playing this Jewish actor playing a Southern sheriff, a racist Southern sheriff, is a stretch for as far as the kind of person he was, but he certainly did it pretty great because he's great in the Defined ones.
oh yeah, yeah. But here I think I've said before, I'm usually like interested in a good conspiracy theory. Just listening to it, thinking about it. I think the catch is taking it emotionally. Like if I want to
Hmm.
hear someone rant on about the earth is flat, I'm willing to listen, but I'm not gonna get into that mindset of they're hiding the truth from us, damn them all, that sort of thing. I certainly, don't get into that. I guess I like to hear a good tall tale.
Yeah, except here it's not a tall tale; it's you know like a dozen little tales. Like
Yeah.
he's just ranting, about everything, and so it just comes his rants come off as pretty unfocused.
Well, yeah, he's got like full on paranoia going basically.
Yeah.
But one thing with the I don't know if you're familiar with the QAnon Anonymous podcast, which is not what it sounds like. Where it's looking at like coming from the not the QAnon point of view, but one thing they do note as they look into those sort of modern conspiracies is a lot of these people do have proper grievances. Are they
Yeah.
airing them out in the correct way? No, but if you're living in a methamphetamine ridden town in the middle of North Dakota, you're going to get a bit grumpy, and there's multiple
Hmm.
ways you can deal with that. So I guess we don't fully see what Oliver Krangle's grievances, and maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe he was, fired from his job or lost his house to the bank or something. We don't really know what his grievance is, but we're seeing the after effects of it basically.
Yeah. I think it might have been more effective if we saw a little bit more of who he was and why he is the way he is. Just like, I guess if I'm putting on my writer's hat, I either make it that like his father was a subversive or something, so he's on the FBI's watch list, or maybe he lost his job because of some sort of communist affiliation or suspicion of deviance, and so that's why the FBI agent is there in the first place. And like the twist is not that he's the FBI agent is there because Krenkel called him, but because it's his regular appointment with his FBI handler, and he's just been living in disgrace this whole time, or something, rather than the obvious thing. Oh no, he gets shrunk into 2 feet, like he thinks the rest of the world is gonna be.
Yeah, my known as the 2 foot revelation is a weird
Yeah,
one. I don't mind that as that being part of his complete insanity.
yeah,
Again, being the twist at the end with the talking cat was like, I think we ran out of some steam there, folks. But
yeah.
um,
But it's also weird because wasn't the previous episode the little people?
yes, it was. That
Yeah,
certainly. I think I have a note about that somewhere.
that's for a series where there's like 30 episodes a season. It's kind of weird to put those two episodes right next to each other.
Yeah, although I guess that is the network scheduling it that way. There
Yeah,
there have been instances of like, I think a few maybe it's season 2 episodes were in season 3, and yeah, there's been a few where it's like, why are we back in the podunk woods of Kentucky for a second week in a row? That
yeah,
might be network scheduling. I mean, I doubt the people making the Twilight Zone gave it a thought because no one was going to ask them anyway. So
yeah. And they're too swamped making 30 episodes a season to even think about that.
this one 36. Oh my
God,
god. That's why we're
that's
still in the middle of
insane.
season 3. Yes. For no, I've had all, of course we did the strike thing too, but all year people, oh, so you're almost done with season 3? No, no, we're not. We're still not. There's still like 6 or 7 episodes to go. So season 3 just goes on forever. You're mentioning how maybe we could get a little more backstory on this guy. But I was thinking, like, in a modernist sense of the word, this is how someone's going to come across on an anonymous internet board, or
Yeah,
ranting on I guess I'll say radio, but some format like that, a YouTube video. This is
mhm.
the picture you're going to get when you have people ranting at you in this way. I mean, I guess you can look up Alex Jones's past, but that's most people don't. They just see yelling, shouting, angry man, right? And that's what you get.
Yeah, and I think people get wrapped up in, anonymous, yeah, YouTubers and message board posters, and it there is the draw of morbid curiosity in actual conspiracy theories. Like you go in thinking this is so bizarre, and then something about the way the information is presented that draws you in deeper and deeper, and you eventually become sort of sold by the conspiracy theory. There's an incredible comic series from Image called Department of Truth by um, James Tinian and Martin Simmons, and it's about where if enough people, it's sort of the leap of logic is that if enough people believe in a thing, it becomes true. Um, so the fact that so the Department of Truth's job is to prevent enough people from believing in, let's say, a moon landing conspiracy, uh, so that it becomes retroactively the case. Um, and it talks about how like it affects people whose children were killed in like a school shooting. And so when enough people start believing that it was a false flag operation to garner sympathy for gun rights activists, they start to like see manifestations of their children who are now not dead because enough people believe in the conspiracy. And so is it in their best interest to believe the conspiracy so their children can come back to life? It goes into so many different fascinating tangents of conspiracy theories and how it affects the people involved that like I never thought possible. And it ropes in like everything from Bigfoot to Satanic Panic. So if you're interested in the subject at all, Department of Truth is just an incredible series.
Yeah, for sure. I know. For me, I told you sometimes I'm at least interested in someone's ramble. And several years ago, I'm a big Beatles fan, so I was like having an obsess over the Paul is dead conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
I'm one. It doesn't matter is I guess the main thing. I like the music. I mean, I assume it probably is the same guy that made it all. And if it's not,
Yeah.
that's a pretty interesting story. So anyway, I'm looking at the thing and album cover clues, all that sort of stuff. I don't think Paul McCartney's dead. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah.
A few years later, I'm like, oh, that was fun. I'm going to go look back. I go back to the website, which I will not name. Still got the Beatles header and stuff. And now every article, I went like 4 pages through, and like all of them were about like the Jews. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So somehow this thing about Paul McCartney death being fake had snowballed over about a 2-year period into being just like this completely insane, incoherent ramble against, the Jewish conspiracy. I'm like, how do you get from point A to point B there? Anyway, glad I wasn't following for the years in between.
Yeah, I think it says something about both conspiracy theories and anti-Semitism and racism is that at the bottom of a lot of these conspiracy theories is like, you know, the protocols of the elders of Zion or something like something completely, nutso and racist that it's like they seem to be perpetually intertwined somehow. And I think it speaks to how poisonous both of those ideas are.
But and yeah, I guess just the pure hatred that
Yeah.
influences those things. I mean, I have a podcast which I guess you could technically refer to as a conspiracy podcast where you look at the Disney films and kind of look at the stories behind and what's in there. But we like these movies, We're
Mhm.
not here to be like, I mean, I guess I'm not going to stand up for the Disney Corporation, but I'm not going to sit there and say that they're doing some bizarre, mind game on the entire population. But it is, it's just to look in and see, hey, there's this magical symbol that's from 300 years ago. The original story is very different. That's fascinating
Yeah.
stuff. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Who read the original Cinderella and was like, that's a thing for kids?
exactly. And we just recently did Aladdin. I love that movie.
Mhm.
Robin Williams genie. It's great. Lots of images, things in there. Apparently, the one of the interesting things we found out on that was it's basically in the wrong place. It really shouldn't be in the Middle East. It should be more like in India or something based on the original stories.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
so there's a conspiracy. Hey, it's in the wrong place. But that's
Yeah.
fascinating, and that's not a thing to get emotional about. I guess
Mhm.
that's again that's the key. And this person is uh Krangle is 100% emotion. Like logic is gone from this guy. He's
Yeah.
basically a Batman 66 villain at this point.
Yeah. And I think that's I think pretty characteristic of people who are all roped into conspiracies is that they have what they perceive as a coherent system like Krangle does, but it is all emotion. So they have a systematized incoherence. And that makes them extremely dangerous.
Yeah, when he's going through his file cabinets, I'm like, I wonder if he's using the Dewey Decimal System with those.
Yeah,
But
probably not.
or yeah, it might just be randomly in there. I guess now it would be the board with the pictures and the threads and the push pins and
Yeah.
all that. But I was thinking like today, if I were making this, I'd probably cast like Paul Dano or something doing this,
Mhm.
kind of doing his Riddler thing from the
Yeah.
last Batman movie. That's kind of the modern version of this.
He is a good punchable creep. I'm sure he's a very nice man, but
I'm not so sure about. Oh, you mean Dano? Okay, yeah, yeah,
yeah, Paul
not
Dano.
Karen. Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure he's yeah, but
But it makes me wonder, like the set design for his apartment is very interesting. Not only because there's a parrot there that I guess is there to give him somebody to talk to when he's by himself, but there's that like crocheted um eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, and that's it.
Yeah, that caught
And,
my eye.
and then there's the Gettysburg Address, and we see him cross out the bit about all men are created equal, as if it's, like childish nonsense.
Someone just slipped
But
that in there. That wasn't in the first draft.
yeah, so like at one point he bought that, right? Like he found those words so powerful that he decided to hang that on his wall. So what happened between him believing wholeheartedly in Lincoln's philosophy and him feeling the self-righteousness to edit it?
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes you hate buy stuff, I guess. Here, I'll give the Trekkie. I'll give the Trekkie equivalent of it. That I've bought Star Trek Into Darkness like 3 times, despite not liking the movie. Because I think I had it on DVD, and then I got on Blu-ray, and then my daughter liked the first Kelvinverse film, so I bought it again with Japanese subtitles. So this movie I don't really
Interesting.
like that much. I've purchased 3 times.
It's like pressing on the canker sore of your Trek fandom over and over
Exactly.
again.
But I was like, because I was trying to get my daughter in some Trek, and a lot of the
Yeah.
older stuff isn't so appealing to at the time 12 or 13-year-old. So it's
Mm.
like, okay, she likes Kelvinverse. Let's do Kelvinverse.
Yeah, yeah.
If I got it in, I'll take it. Oh, I should also do my in episode correction. I called his pet a cat earlier and not a parrot. When you said parrot, I was like,
Yeah.
what? There we go. That's a for getting into a conspiracy mind bent. When I said it, I had the picture clearly in my head where his cat talks to him at the end, and that's absolutely not what happened in the episode. That was a
Yeah.
parrot. It made sense that the parrot said something, not that coherently, but the cat saying it's even dumber. So I had made the twist dumber in my mind. But yeah, that's something you
Memory's fallible, yeah.
right. You can't trust everything, especially when you're going to start, canceling people by making phone calls as this guy is.
Mm.
Because yeah, who do we get pushing back on? We get Mrs. Lucas coming in for her husband, which is a little bit weird, but I don't know. Should Mr. Lucas be standing his own ground? I guess they get in a fist fight if Mr. Lucas showed up. So it's
I
better
think
that
it's interesting how, like, she says something along the lines of, like, the hospital has dismissed the Kringle's letters as nonsense, but her husband is very sensitive, and so they're really driving him crazy. So I got this, picture in my head of this doctor who lost a patient through no fault of his own, just because, doctors lose patients. That's the, kind of goes with the territory. But I think when Krangle found out about this and started writing letters to the hospital to have him dismissed, that really affected the doctor negatively and sort of like got to him. And so it was up to the wife to stand up for him because he just wasn't up to confronting his accuser. And like that seems like a really rich narrative that we could have explored maybe, but the episode just sort of like explains it in one line.
yeah, I guess that's where I was like thinking the situation was a little weird. Again, we don't really know what kind of state Mr. Lucas is in. Did he complain about it
Yeah.
once? Is he in a deep depression now? We don't really get that. So
Mm-hmm.
it also it might be the fact that I've been living in Japan where people never want to have confrontation. So the idea of her just going there to confront a madman seems a little weird. Like I've been living in a world where you would avoid the madman. I mean, I regularly walk down the street with people coming by who aren't quite right, talking to themselves or something. That's pretty
Yeah.
common in Japan. I guess because it's
That's
safe to
also, I
walk
think,
around, so you can do
yeah,
that.
yeah. There's that. What an idea. Um, but I think there's also that culture in, I think, in a lot of the South and the Midwest, the sort of bless their heart mentality, but also in I think cities like New York and LA, where people are just so used to weirdos that if they see somebody mumbling to themselves naked on the street, they're just it's like, all right, I didn't see it, I didn't see it. Just keep walking to my subway entrance. So I think in America, we do have a tendency to avoid uncomfortable situations as well.
Yeah. We should talk about the second visitor.
Mhm.
What was his name again? I wrote that down. The trivia. That was Luther
Luther
Hall.
Hall,
Luther Hall,
FBI
the
agent.
FBI
Yeah,
agent, who I guess he's just called to come over. I mean, God, think about that. Calling, could you send over an agent, please?
yeah,
I definitely thought that was interesting. That was probably the most interesting bit of the episode, where the guy does a very kind of modern check-in on mental health, which is,
yeah,
instantly shut down. But the fact that he did it on 1962 television, I thought was kind of interesting.
yeah. This is not like any 1962 FBI agent I ever heard of. Especially when like this is a really idealistic version of the FBI. When he says, when Krangle is saying, or we should just like execute all these deviants. The FBI agent says, Mr. Krangle, we have something in this country that makes all that stuff quite unnecessary. What is that? It's the law, Mr. Krangle. It's the law. Like that's a very like dragnet sort of philosophy that you wouldn't expect from Rod Serling. And so it's interesting that he uses the FBI to give this crank a talking to, especially when Rod Serling himself was, you know, he wasn't blacklisted, but he was assuredly hounded for his political beliefs, and it made his job harder, certainly.
Maybe that's why he has the dashing FBI agent to throw him off the trail,
Yeah,
man. But even more interesting, yeah, he lays down the law, but then it's just like, dude, I don't have the specific quote, but are you okay? You don't seem right. I can get you some mental
yeah,
health if you need it. And I was like, wow, I really don't recall hearing that on television in the 60s previously. Definitely not in the 50s on the our friends over at Genealogy are talking about the rules of masculinity, which are being broken in this episode. So
hmm yeah. He's not, you know, aggressively accusing Mr. Krangle of being a conspiracy theorist or being a waste of time. He's sort of like gently telling him that he needs help. And yeah, that's something that you wouldn't see from many places on TV in the 1960s. Not certainly not from the FBI. And so I think it's maybe Sorlin himself sort of like empathizing with these incredibly angry, disenfranchised people who are lashing out and searching for something to hold on to.
and he does it calmly in a way that is
Yeah,
actually professional, because the TV thing would usually be screaming at him, "You're out of your mind. You need a psychiatrist or whatever,"
yeah,
which he doesn't do. He actually does it in a intelligent, undramatic way. But
yeah,
I guess that's the part where I didn't want to just like, 2 minutes after that, we get the dumbest twist the Twilight Zone has thrown at us. So I'm like, I guess I'm really kind of savoring the fact that we got a really good scene right before
yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah,
um,
there is like good stuff in here, and like Theodore Beichel is great as as lunatic. I like his glasses work. Um, a prop left over from Time Enough at Last, maybe.
yeah,
But yeah, it just doesn't come together, unfortunately.
yeah. There's some other twist, or just leaving him alone in his weird delusion, where several people have confronted him. In the case, the FBI agent is actually trying to help him. Maybe a
Yeah,
better twist is just leaving him to fester in
yeah.
his conspiracy apartment. I mean, I
Or
guess
if
that's what he's
he
doing
could just
anyway.
be like he, it could be a thing every day where he says at 4 o'clock everybody's going to shrink, or because we see him at one point like winding his clock. So maybe he could be like, "Oh, my clock's wrong," and sort of readjust it to be 3:30, and then wait, and then at 4 o'clock he finds nobody's shrunk, and then does it over and over again. So he's caught in this loop of his own psychosis. Um, but yeah, him shrinking and being talked down to by a parrot doesn't have much weight.
I guess they just wanted to do that silly composite shot at the end. So
Yeah,
I mean, I guess it's been a few weeks since I guess the little people last week technically had some special effects going on. So, but yeah, this again, it would have been nice to have a little more background with Mrs. Lucas, but that was an interesting scene. There's these two pretty meaty scenes surrounded by or followed by this silly twist. And I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know, 2 feet tall. I mean, I don't know. I don't think you could still live your life. I think you need some more ladders, but it's not really a
You
world ender.
yeah, your food budget would probably cut down by 60 to 70%.
Well, 2/3, as he
Yeah,
says.
two-thirds. Yeah.
Yeah. Although that'd be only the 6 foot people would be 2 feet, right? Other people
Yeah.
would be shorter than that. I don't know.
I'd be shorter than 2 feet.
I mean,
Sorry.
it's not the worst fate. I mean, if this guy is just going to continue destroying people's lives or trying to destroy people's lives for no particular reason, I mean, maybe that this is a pretty nice fate for him.
Yeah. Yeah, it is better than the aforementioned Little People, where the crazy guy gets crushed by accident by giant aliens.
Yeah, I mean, this guy can keep on doing what he's doing. He just needs a few more ladders.
Yeah, and a smaller phone, a smaller pen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He could, he's a mini me now.
Yeah.
So it's actually just having a review of that last night after having put myself through a Love Guru. I was like, I gotta watch a little bit of
Ooh,
proper
man.
powers. It was for a podcast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been on that podcast
Yes,
on a
yes, yes,
movie a
yes.
little better than the Love Guru.
Yes, yes, that is correct. Yeah, I also did find interesting that you're referring to Salt of the Earth, which is the mid 50s, very, kind of progressive socialist movie, whereas yeah, this guy is the opposite, being played by a guy who probably would have been in cahoots with the people who made with the
Yeah, yeah,
blacklisted folks. So
yeah. He might have been one of the only people in America to have seen Salt of the Earth, but at that point, I
yeah,
would expect Theodore Michael to have connections in the Union leftist underground.
yeah, if he's hanging around with Pete Seeger, he's probably on
Yeah,
somebody's list.
yeah.
So, did you have any other big thoughts on this particular episode before I start hitting the questions up?
Uh, no, I think we covered all my points, but thank you.
Okay. So as far as the questions go, who in this episode went in or through the Twilight Zone?
Oh, for sure, Krangle. We don't have many options, but he's the one going into it.
Yeah. Although, like we were saying, I think a deeper Twilight Zone would actually be of his own making. I guess maybe that's the problem here, that it's coming from it's coming from an outside force that is the Twilight Zone. Haha, you are too
Yeah,
small now. Whereas maybe that's where the twist just doesn't work. It would have been way more effective to have actually been of his own doing, which I guess you could say
yeah,
because he kept saying everyone's going to be 2 foot tall. That's evil. But still, I mean, I like your idea of he's just constantly turning back the clock because nobody's changing size at 4 o'clock. So back to 3:30, back to 3:30. Um, that's a much more like harrowing twist, I think, that fits this guy. So
yeah. Well,
we
thank you.
get this. We get the silly end of the. So yeah, you can have your writer's hat for that.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
um, so talking about does he deserve it? In that case, I guess I'm going to say he doesn't get what he deserves because he's probably going to keep on. After a few adjustments, he's going to be able to keep on doing what he's doing, I assume.
Unless he's killed and eaten by the parrot
Yeah,
at
yeah,
some
the
point.
parrot did get pretty surly at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe that's where that's where the sitcom starts. The conspiracy theorist that's 2 feet tall and is antagonistic parrot every
Yeah.
week. Yeah, it's kind of like it's like Mr. Ed on LSD or something.
Yeah.
We will see the Twilight Zone actually trying to start a sitcom in a few weeks, but
Oof.
yeah, Cavender is coming. But so, what do you think? Does this guy get what he deserves?
Yeah, he gets some sort of comeuppance, I guess. But I'm sure he still thinks he's right. Like he's not gonna change his tune and call and apologize to the hospital or to the teachers he's accused or anything. Yeah, and we don't we don't see the consequences of him being 2 feet tall. Yeah, so it just seems like a strange twist that doesn't comport with his actions.
Yeah, this episode does have a whiff of dinner's ready in 10 minutes. Let's finish this
Yeah.
thing up.
Yeah, I think it's a consequence of having to do 36 scripts a season. Like they can't all be winners.
Yeah. And that is the interesting thing about season 3, because at this point the production's pretty well oiled. Like the
Hmm.
production, I mean, considering that they don't have a giant budget, they have a early 60s television budget. So but it's like they know how to do this stuff. They know what tropes they kind of fall back to here and there. But and in the first half of the season, it was definitely like fully well oiled. But yeah, the some of the episodes are feeling slightly tired, I guess. This
Hmm.
being one of those.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean um communist denouncement and like uh, pushing people towards conformity. Those are all themes that Sterling addressed over and over again, certainly, and did so brilliantly on numerous occasions. And so I don't fault the show for returning to those sort of themes, but in this case, it just didn't come together.
But yeah, compare this to the monsters are doing Maple Street, where
Yeah,
everyone formulates their own personal conspiracies within like
yeah,
5 minutes or whatever.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I am starting to notice where, and that is part of the history of the show, that Serling is getting a little burnt out by this point, and
Mhm.
this
Yeah.
episode again still has some brilliance in it, but definitely could have gone through maybe drafts 3 and 4
Mhm.
first. But let's put this one on the tripometer. 0 is not trippy at all. 5 is very trippy. Um, where do you want to place this one?
Um, if I were to put myself in Krangle's shoes, I think the last moment is pretty dang trippy.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, being a 30-year height and being talked to angrily by a parrot, that's a 5. Uh, but for most of it, it's like, oh, it's just a crazy guy making crank calls. It's like a 2. So I'll average it out and say like 3.5.
Yeah, I started it too because I'm like, well, Krangle's kind of too real. I mean, there people do this. They do
Yeah,
it on the internet now. They don't make calls, but
yeah.
it happens. Um, and then the twist, yeah, I guess if you're in his shoes, yes, it's 5 trippy. But watching it, I'm like, again, I'm like, maybe we take that out and put a more subtle twist. So I'm gonna bump it up only to 2.5
Yeah.
on my end.
Well,
Um,
an FBI agent from the 60s normalizing mental health care. That's pretty trippy.
it is. Yeah, I liked seeing that though. That's the
Yeah.
thing. That particular aspect of the script was pretty genius. So, this is like I don't know, like Fleetwood Mac's Tusk or something. The 10 songs on there are fantastic. And then there's some stuff on there that you could probably do without. Uh
Hmm.
Giving an opinion on an album that nobody thinks about that hard anymore, I guess. I like it better than the popular ones.
No, that's cool. Like that, I think having an opinion on Tusk is interesting because I like it when you know a band like Fleetwood Mac or Led Zeppelin or the Beatles, like they're so ubiquitous that it's almost like there's nothing more to be said. But if you have an interesting opinion on that music, I think that's something worth listening to and worth talking about.
Yeah, but I guess that's something where the Twilight Zone is sort of like your Led Zeppelin or Fleetwood Mac or Beatles of television. So,
Hmm.
something like this, it's the failed curiosity. I mean, another one's the Beach Boys, where I very much my favorite Beach Boys stuff's the late 60s, early 70s stuff where it was all falling apart and they were getting very experimental, which
Yeah.
also you know, I love to say about the Beach Boys, they made the best songs ever and the worst songs ever simultaneously. So
And I mean, yeah, Metallica is one of my favorite bands of all time, and they made Master of Puppets and Saint Anger. Like, how do you like what happened to you guys? And I'll never stop loving them, but it's just puzzling that musical geniuses can just, or literary geniuses can just so lose the plot at some point.
yeah, that is just the weird disconnect about this episode, because I do think that scene with the FBI is one of the better scenes that's been in the Twilight Zone, followed by like the worst twist. So it's just
Yeah.
it's some whiplash when you're watching this one.
Mm.
I guess that's why people refer to this as a weird episode.
Yeah.
It's
I
very
think
insightful, then very stupid.
I'm a big James Bond head, and I think Die Another Day is one of the most reviled James Bond movies. But if you turn it off like halfway through, it's pretty good, because that's just James Bond getting captured by the North Koreans, and then there's this really great like 10-minute escape um chase sequence where he gets out finally, and then after that is when the whole like invisible car ice palace stuff happens. um and so that's why I think like that film, that juxtaposition makes it such a bizarre viewing experience, just like this episode.
See, that one, this one is an anthology. This one just sits, you have to take it for what it is. And
Yeah.
I've spewed out in multiple ways my theory on Die Another Day, that if you watch it as he's rotting away in the North Korean prison and that's all his fever dream, it makes
Sure.
and then in the next movie you get a new Bond, right? So
Yeah.
so I guess Pierce Brosnan withered away and died in a North Korean prison. That's how I don't know, maybe that's too dark of you in the movie, but it does make it watchable. Because now you're like, invisible car. Well, yeah, of course he's
Yeah.
hallucinating on the floor of this
Why
prison.
not?
So why not? Ice Palace? Yeah, he's in a. It's too hot. It's summer in North Korea, so he's imagining an ice palace.
Windsurfing 007. Oof.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, this is the one where he surfs the tidal wave, or is it is that the world's not enough?
No,
Yeah, it's this
that's
one,
this
this one,
one.
because
Yeah.
they set up the surfing. Yeah, yeah, that's fever dream
Yeah.
stuff. I like that. So, I'm also a man whose favorite Bond movie is Moonraker. So maybe you shouldn't like take my opinion too seriously.
No, I love Moonraker. It's not my favorite, but I think it rocks.
It's the one I watch the most often. It's funny. I have a friend who also loves. He's like, yeah, I love the first half, and then I get not really into the second half. I was like, oh, I thought the second half was a good half. So we're coming up
All
from
the
opposite
stuff in
ends.
space.
I like the
Yeah.
space stuff. That's right.
It looks like it was made 10 years before Star Wars.
Right, right. Even a lot of the cash-in movies did that. Battle Beyond the Stars, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I guess we'll wind this one down for today, because we've definitely fallen off the Twilight Zone. It's just fine. But what's going on over at the Popcorn Eschaton?
What?
I think
Yeah,
I saw you
I'm
just The
sorry.
Matrix.
Yeah, yeah.
Did I say it wrong?
No, yeah, Popcorn Eschaton.
Oh, got it
That's
right. Good.
the podcast I do with my friend Scott Thorough. We talk about leftism and religion in movies. That includes movies that have an express religious or leftist bent, and sometimes we choose to read a movie in that way. And so our latest episode tackles The Matrix, made by the Wachowskis, and there's all sorts of religious allegories in that one, as well as some trans allegories that the Wachowskis were sort of sneaking in there in a couple or many brilliant ways. And so it was a real fun discussion.
For sure.
And it's on the Zebras in America podcast feed if anyone is interested.
Radio. And yeah, I actually have that one queued up because I'm always interested in some Matrix chit chat. But I don't know when you post it, but at least I saw the Twitter yesterday. So
yeah, I posted it Friday, so that's what, 5 days ago.
okay, so it wasn't untimely. That's good.
Yeah.
As for this one's Time Enough podcast, I guess we're on X, maybe we're on Facebook. You can support us on Patreon at Podcastius, where we do some other ones. Of course, John, you mentioned you've been on Films and Filth, where we look at the top 100 and bottom 100 movies as rated by IMDb users. And you can hear John on Salt of the Earth, which we did during the strike and was probably the most fitting movie to do during a strike. So thanks for bringing that one our way.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on. It was a great conversation.
There's some other ones with Podcast 1999 about Space 1999, and some video game ones. Luke Loves Pokemon, Hyrule Field Report, and the Game Show, which is a kind of British panel style game show. Okay, I got all that out. I can turn the tape recorder off. But yeah, as always, thanks for popping in today, John.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I'm always up to talk Twilight Zone.
And we will see what happens at 4 o'clock. What actually, I'll tell you what's going to happen. I'm going to have 2 foot tall people using me as a jungle gym. That's what's going to happen at 4 o'clock because I have little kids to teach at 4 o'clock today.
Good luck.
Bit of a lie. That was yesterday, but hey, it's got to make it sound good for. Yeah, that.
Sorry, we reached the John Arminio law of podcasting that the longer a conversation with me goes, the more likely it is that the likelihood that I mention James Bond approaches 100%.
Oh no, I mean, yeah, same here. It's like Bond, Batman, the X-Men, just the MCU keep popping up, usually in ways like, oh, I'm so burnt out on the MCU, but it just keeps coming up.
Yeah.
Like with not just with you. This is an everybody thing. That's what happens when you do genre podcasts, I guess.
Yeah.
But
hell, I work at a comic book store, so
right.
I know that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you can stick your name on that law though. That's everybody.
Yeah.
That on the Love Guru, that was funny because that's the where we had John Champion come in, and he was like, yeah, a big Mike Myers fan, as you can hear from the regular mission log stuff. So it's like, I was, maybe I'll come in and be able to champion it, as like, pun intended, as like, oh, but yeah, this is kind of a hidden treasure. As it turned out, he hated it the most out of the 4 of us. So
yeah. I do think that movie, there is some interesting ideas in that movie, because like, I think it's on purpose that there is this like weird cringy like cultural appropriation aspect to that character, and then the guy he's love guruing is a black hockey player, and so I think like he's trying to navigate that, but it's very clumsy and not formed. So like I think he should have brought in another writer to like go over that script to get it somewhere, or maybe cast somebody else and not him as the character.
Well, my take was just make it a hockey movie and have the Love Guru be a minor character, like Fat Bastard.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That would have made it funny, because what we did like with the sportscasters, Stephen Colbert is really funny.
Yes. Yeah. God, yeah.
The book titles were great. Their pitch was actually that they should have made him more of a sham, like as a guru, like kind of a,
so make him
hustler.
Like a bad guy. Yeah.
I mean, but by the end of the movie, maybe he starts practicing what he preaches, but being like having him as a more inauthentic character, but
because he is so earnest.
Right, but that was Myers' thing. Like, I don't want to paint this as a bad guy at any point, because he was into the, guru thing at the time.
But what I want from a John Champion, Mike Myers podcast is for him to point out all the references in the original Austin Powers, just because he knows the 60s so well. And like there's so much weird 60s shit in the original Austin Powers movie that's not James Bond.
Yeah, I was listening to some other people talking about the genius of the Austin Powers series is, a lot of kids got into it, or like teenagers or whatever, not knowing any of the references. Like Dad maybe had seen the Flint movies, but the kids probably hadn't. I didn't know the Flint movies existed till after Austin Powers came out.
Like the fembots like bra rifles. That's from a 1965 film called The 10th Victim. That's sort of about a reality deathmatch show that's almost like the Hunger Games.
Mm.
It's great, but when I saw The 10th Victim, I was like, holy shit, that's the gag from Austin Powers. Like, it's so like I had no idea. So recommend that if you want some 60s ephemera. But anyway, sorry, I'm
Hey, no, I did a whole run of The Prisoner, so as a podcast, so I'm up for the
nice.
ephemera.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one will be up not this week, but the following week. Yeah, so
Cool.
not too long away. I we do have you on the films and filth list, but it's I think High and Low is the first one that the
Okay.
next one you're on, which will probably I guess it'll be March. I'm looking at the old dates here because I have dates from like before we took the strike break. So I'm just at it
Yeah.
says December 14th. I'm adding 3 months and as a guess. So
Okay.
but maybe I'll bug you about Twilight Zone or something before that anyway.
Sure. Sure. I'm
Oh, I
down.
should take your temperature on Space 1999. Is that one of your jams?
I know of it, but I've never seen an episode.
Okay. We've been doing that podcast, but
Yeah.
usually it's funny because the guests know more about the show than we do because we're kind of
Yeah.
like I vaguely watched. I'm probably coming from where you were. I mean, I have the discs and stuff, which is one of the reasons I was like looking on my shelf. What show should we do next after The Prisoner? But
Cool cult sci-fi stuff.
yeah, most of it's new to us, and season two will be completely new to me. I never actually got to
Mhm.
season two, which apparently is much worse. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, if you ever, I
Have you been
basically,
enjoying it?
for the most part, yeah, yeah.
Cool.
That you might actually be. I should bring you on for one of those because it's probably the most metaphysical of sci-fi shows. Like a lot of
Interesting.
things go very unexplained and are very weird. Or there's one episode where Commander Koenig is basically just going on faith when the rest of the crew is not science. When the rest of the crew is disagreeing that they're going to collide with another planet, and Koenig's told, no, it'll
Mhm.
be okay. You're not actually going to collide and die. So obviously everyone else is like, oh my god, we're going to hit this planet. So he basically goes by faith, which is definitely not a Star Trek thing to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It
Interesting.
kind of plays like the TV series of the motion picture, actually, because I feel like the motion picture gets a little more. I mean, they explain at the end with V'ger, but it has definitely a
Mhm.
metaphysical feel through a lot
Yeah,
of the movie with,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Spock's, you know, feeling V'ger's curiosity, that sort of thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
mm-mm. But
Spock's journey, the V'ger is a journey within oneself, that kind of thing.
that yes. So that
Yeah.
comes through in Space 1999, but it's also
Cool.
cheesy as hell in a way that either you find appealing or dissuading. So
Yeah.
I guess if you think Anderson models are cool, you're in. But
I think they're cool.
okay, well, maybe I'll get you in for one of those before too long.
Okay. Sure. I'd be interested to expand my sci-fi palette.
And I'm trying to knock out stuff before the holiday season hits, so I don't need to
Hmm.
record anything then. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I've been lazy with that one, and well, maybe not lazy. All the guests are on the Discord. I'm not really searching for them, but
Sure.
but hey, it makes it a little easier.
Hmm.
I'll stop this guy.